There are moments in life when the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally say words that cut so deep, they either break you completely or forge you into something stronger than steel. For me, that moment came on a cold February evening in 2018, sitting around my family's dinner table in suburban Phoenix, Arizona, when my own father looked me dead in the eye and said, "Marcus, you're 28 years old and you're absolutely useless. Your cousin Tommy makes more in a month at the warehouse than you've made all year with your silly little computer games." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother stared at her mashed potatoes. My younger sister Sarah smirked into her water glass, and my Uncle Pete nodded in agreement like my father had just delivered some profound wisdom. In that moment, something inside me didn't just break, it crystallized into pure determination. My name is Marcus Chen Williams, and I'm 34 years old now. I'm sitting in my corner office on the 47th floor of a glass tower in downtown Phoenix, watching the sunset paint the desert mountains in shades of gold and crimson. The view from here is spectacular, but it's nothing compared to the view I had 3 months ago when I walked into Precision Manufacturing, the same company where my father, uncle, and cousin all work, and sat across from their CEO, David Morrison, to discuss acquiring his business. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Growing up in the Williams household wasn't easy if you didn't fit the mold. My father, Robert Williams, was a machinist who'd worked at Precision Manufacturing for over 25 years. He believed in honest work, meaning labor that left you dirty and exhausted at the end of the day. My Uncle Pete worked there too, running the quality control department, and they'd managed to get my cousin Tommy hired straight out of high school at 18. The Williams men were blue-collar through and through. They woke up at 5 a.m., punched time clocks, came home smelling like motor oil and metal shavings, and took pride in building things with their hands. It was a noble tradition, one that had sustained our family through 3 generations. My grandfather had been a welder, my great-grandfather a railroad worker. The expectation was clear. I would follow the same path, except I was different. While my father and uncle spent weekends in the garage working on cars, I was in my bedroom writing code. While they watched football and drank beer, I was learning programming languages and designing websites. By the time I was 16, I was making small amounts of money fixing computers for neighbors and building basic websites for local businesses. It wasn't much, maybe $50 here, $100 there, but to me, it felt like magic. Creating something from nothing, solving problems with logic and creativity, watching lines of code transform into functional programs that actually helped people. My family saw it differently. Playing on computers, they called it. Wasting time on that electronic nonsense. When I graduated high school in 2008, right in the middle of the financial crisis, my father was adamant, "College is a waste of money we don't have. Come work at the plant with me. They're always looking for good people, and Pete can put in a word." I tried to explain that the world was changing, that technology was becoming more important every year, that I could make a real career out of programming. But every conversation ended the same way, with my father shaking his head and muttering about pipe dreams and unrealistic expectations. The compromise we reached was that I would take a part-time job at a local electronics store while attending Phoenix Community College for computer science. It seemed reasonable enough, but the constant criticism never stopped. Every family gathering became an opportunity for comparisons. Tommy, who'd been hired at Precision Manufacturing right after graduation, was held up as the golden example of success and responsibility. "Tommy's already been promoted twice," my Uncle Pete would announce at every holiday dinner, "making $18 an hour now, plus benefits. Kid's got his head on straight." Meanwhile, I was struggling through college while working retail, making barely above minimum wage and accumulating student debt. The electronics store job was mind-numbing, selling overpriced cables to customers who didn't understand technology, while my manager, a 22-year-old named Brad who knew less about computers than I did, constantly questioned my methods and micromanaged my every move. The breaking point at that job came during my second year of college. A customer brought in a laptop that had been infected with malware so severe that it was barely functional. Brad's solution was to tell the customer they needed to buy a new computer, a $800 sale that would boost his monthly numbers. I knew I could clean the malware and restore the laptop in about 2 hours of work, saving the customer hundreds of dollars. When I suggested this to Brad, He pulled me aside with a condescending smile. "Marcus, buddy, you're not here to be a hero. You're here to sell merchandise. Customer comes in with a problem, we sell them a solution. That's how retail works. But this is dishonest," I protested. "Her laptop just needs cleaning. I could have it running like new by this afternoon." "And then what?" "She leaves without buying anything, tells her friends we fix computers for free, and pretty soon we're running a charity instead of a business." Brad's voice carried the authority of someone who'd clearly had this conversation with corporate before. "Stick to the script, Marcus. Sell the merchandise." I watched that customer leave with a heavy heart, knowing she was about to spend her rent money on a computer she didn't need because I lacked the courage to stand up to my manager. That night, I went home and started building a simple website called Phoenix PC Rescue. My plan was modest: offer honest computer repair services to people who were being taken advantage of by big box stores and overpriced repair shops. Within 3 months, I was earning more from weekend computer repairs than from my part-time retail job. Word spread quickly in our neighborhood. Mrs. Patterson, an elderly widow, became my first regular customer after I saved her deceased husband's photos from a crashed hard drive that Best Buy had declared completely unrecoverable. She paid me $200 and cried when I handed her the USB drive containing 40 years of family memories. The other place wanted $1,500 and couldn't promise anything, she told me, pressing an extra $50 into my hand. "You're an angel, Marcus." But when I excitedly shared this success with my family, the response was predictably dismissive. "That's nice, Marcus," my mother said with the same tone she'd used to praise a child's finger painting. "But you can't build a career on fixing old ladies' computers." My father was more direct. "You're 20 years old and playing tech support for senior citizens. Tommy just got promoted to line supervisor. He's managing a team of 8 people now, with full benefits and a 401k. When are you going to get serious about your future?" The criticism intensified as I progressed through college. Every semester brought new challenges: professors who couldn't teach, group projects with lazy partners, and the constant stress of balancing coursework with work and my growing computer repair business. Meanwhile, Tommy was thriving at precision manufacturing. He'd bought a new truck, moved into his own apartment, and was dating Jennifer Morrison, the CEO's daughter. "That boy's going places," my Uncle Pete would say with obvious pride. "Smart enough to recognize opportunity when it knocks. Not everyone needs to make life so complicated." The implication was clear. I was making life complicated by pursuing education and entrepreneurship instead of accepting the straightforward path of factory work. Every family gathering became a subtle interrogation about my progress toward joining the real world of steady employment. By my senior year of college, the pressure was intense. I was 24 years old, still living at home to save money, and working 30-hour weeks at the electronics store while taking a full course load. My computer repair business had grown to the point where I was earning about $500 per week on weekends, but I reinvested most of it into better tools and equipment. To my family, this looked like I was playing businessman instead of earning real money. The final straw came 6 months before graduation. I'd been accepted into the computer science program at Arizona State University and qualified for a partial scholarship. The remaining tuition would require taking out additional student loans, but I'd calculated that with my existing business as a foundation, I could realistically start a legitimate technology services company within 2 years of graduating. When I presented this plan to my family, asking for their emotional support if not financial help, the reaction was swift and brutal. "Absolutely not," my father declared. "You're 24 years old, Marcus. It's time to stop playing games and start acting like a man. I've already talked to Pete about getting you hired at Precision. They're expanding the IT department. You could use some of that computer knowledge in a real job." "But Dad, I'm 6 months away from my bachelor's degree. I've already built a successful business. Why would I give that up to take an entry-level job?" "Because your successful business isn't paying rent or putting food on the table. Because you're living in a fantasy where you think you're going to become some kind of computer mogul. Because it's time to grow up." My mother, who usually stayed out of these arguments, surprised me by joining in. "Marcus, honey, your father's right. Tommy makes more in a month than you've saved in 2 years. Maybe it's time to be practical." That's when my sister Sarah, who was 19 and had just dropped out of college to work at a local salon, decided to add her perspective. "Besides, Marcus, let's be honest, you're not exactly Steve Jobs material. You fix old people's computers and build basic websites. There are probably thousands of people who can do what you do." The words hit like physical blows, but I tried to maintain my composure. I'm not trying to be Steve Jobs. I'm trying to build something meaningful, something that helps people while supporting myself. Isn't that what you always taught me? To work hard and help others. My father's response ended the conversation. What I taught you was to be realistic about your abilities and responsible about your choices. You're neither of those things right now. I spent the next 3 months in a state of emotional turmoil. Part of me wondered if they were right, if I was being unrealistic, if I should accept the security of a steady job over the uncertainty of entrepreneurship. I watched Tommy's continued success at precision manufacturing with a mixture of envy and resentment. He'd been promoted again, this time to production coordinator, and was earning $25 an hour plus overtime. He'd also gotten engaged to Jennifer Morrison, which essentially guaranteed his future with the company. Meanwhile, I was struggling with senior-level coursework while my weekend business demands increased. Customers were calling constantly, often with urgent problems that couldn't wait until the weekend. I was turning away business because I didn't have time to serve everyone who needed help. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had more demand than I could handle, but my family saw this as evidence that I wasn't serious about business. The breaking point came during my college graduation ceremony in December 2012. I'd managed to graduate with a 3.4 GPA while working and running my business. It should have been a moment of celebration and pride. Instead, as we gathered for the traditional family dinner afterward, the conversation immediately turned to what's next. So now that you've gotten this computer degree out of your system, my father began, Pete says they're definitely hiring in IT. It's perfect timing. You could start after the new year. I'm not taking a job at precision manufacturing, I said quietly but firmly. I'm going to expand my business. I've already identified 3 major opportunities: small business IT consulting, web development for local companies, and managed services for professional practices. I have a 5-year plan. The silence that followed was arctic. Finally, my Uncle Pete spoke up. Marcus, son, you've been playing with this computer hobby for 6 years now. It's time to join the real world. Tommy's making $27 an hour now, with full benefits and profit sharing. He's got security, stability, a future. What do you have? A bunch of old computers in your bedroom and a handful of elderly customers who pay you pocket change. It's not pocket change, I protested. I made $26,000 last year from my business while going to school full-time. $26,000, my father repeated with obvious disdain. Tommy made $31,000 last year, plus benefits worth another $8,000, and he didn't have to go into debt to do it. But my business is growing. Every month I have more customers, higher revenues. By next year, I could be making more than Tommy. That's when my cousin Tommy himself, who'd been quietly eating throughout this conversation, finally spoke up. Marcus, dude, no offense, but you're living in a dream world. You think fixing computers is going to make you rich? There are companies like Geek Squad that do what you do, but with real backing, real resources. You're trying to compete with corporations using a laptop and a toolbox. It's not realistic. My sister nodded in agreement. Tommy's right. You're smart, Marcus, but you're not business smart. You don't understand how the real world works. And then came the words that would change everything. My father, the man who was supposed to believe in me more than anyone else in the world, looked directly at me and delivered the verdict that had apparently been building for years. Marcus, I love you, but I have to be honest. You're 24 years old and you still don't understand how life works. You think you're going to build some technology empire from our garage, but you don't have the experience, the connections, or frankly, the business sense to make it work. Tommy recognized his limitations and chose a path that plays to his strengths. You refuse to recognize yours. He paused, and I could see the disappointment in his eyes. Son, you're book smart, I'll give you that. But you're not street smart, you're not practical, and after 6 years of watching you chase these pipe dreams while your cousin builds a real career, I have to say it, you're useless when it comes to real-world success. The word useless hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Around the table, no one contradicted him. My mother looked uncomfortable but said nothing. My Uncle Pete nodded slowly, as if my father had finally articulated what they'd all been thinking. Tommy looked almost sympathetic, but he didn't speak up in my defense. My sister Sarah actually seemed relieved that someone had finally said what she'd apparently been thinking all along. In that moment, sitting in the dining room where I'd eaten thousands of meals, surrounded by the people who were supposed to love and support me unconditionally, I felt more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. The weight of their collective disappointment was crushing, but underneath the hurt, something else was building, a cold, hard determination that would fuel everything that came next. I stood up from the table slowly, my diploma still in its folder beside my untouched piece of cake. "Thank you for making your feelings clear," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I understand now where I stand with this family." As I walked toward the door, my father called after me, "Marcus, don't be dramatic. We're just trying to help you see reality." I turned back one last time, looking at each of them in turn. "The reality I see is that you've already decided I'm going to fail. You've written me off before I've even really begun. That tells me everything I need to know." That night, I sat in my bedroom surrounded by the computers and equipment they dismissed as toys, and I made a decision that would change the trajectory of my entire life. I wasn't going to prove them wrong with words or arguments. I was going to prove them wrong with results. And someday, when I had built something significant enough that even they couldn't dismiss it, I would make sure they understood exactly how wrong they'd been about their useless son. I had no idea then that someday would come sooner than any of us could have imagined, or that it would involve their beloved precision manufacturing in ways none of us could have predicted. All I knew was that I was done trying to win their approval. From that night forward, I was going to build something that would speak for itself. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The morning after that devastating family dinner, I woke up with a clarity I'd never experienced before. The hurt was still there, raw and persistent, but it had transformed into something more useful, pure, focused determination. I sat at my desk and opened a new document on my computer, typing 4 words that would become my guiding principle: prove them all wrong. Within 48 hours, I'd made 3 life-changing decisions. First, I would move out of my parents' house immediately, even if it meant living in a studio apartment and eating ramen noodles for months. Second, I would expand my computer repair business into a full-service technology consulting company. Third, I would document everything, every client interaction, every business lesson learned, every small victory and crushing defeat. If I was going to build something significant, I needed to understand exactly how I did it. Finding an apartment in Phoenix on a $26,000 annual income was brutal. After 3 weeks of searching, I found a 400-square-foot studio in a questionable neighborhood for $485 per month. The walls were paper-thin, the air conditioning barely worked, and the parking lot looked like a demolition derby practice ground. But it was mine. For the first time in my life, I had a space where nobody could tell me that my dreams were unrealistic or that my computer equipment was just taking up room. The first month of independence was simultaneously liberating and terrifying. Without my parents' house as a base of operations, I had to completely restructure my business. I converted half of my tiny studio into an office space, with a desk made from a sheet of plywood and 2 filing cabinets I bought at a yard sale. My bed doubled as a couch for client meetings, and I learned to schedule appointments carefully so customers wouldn't arrive while I was cooking dinner on my single hot plate. Money was impossibly tight. After rent, utilities, and basic groceries, I had maybe $50 left each month for everything else. I bought clothes at thrift stores, cut my own hair, and walked everywhere I could to save on gas. When my car broke down in February 2013, I couldn't afford to fix it, so I spent 3 weeks taking the bus to client appointments, carrying my toolbox and laptop bag like some kind of traveling computer repairman. But something remarkable happened during those early months of struggle. My business began to grow in ways I hadn't anticipated. Word of mouth in Phoenix was powerful, especially among small business owners who felt neglected by larger technology companies. Mrs. Patterson, the widow whose photos I'd recovered, referred me to her accountant, who referred me to her lawyer, who referred me to 3 other small law firms. Each new client taught me something different about business operations. The accountant, Helen Rodriguez, showed me how to track expenses and organize financial records properly. "Marcus," she said during one of our sessions, "you're technically proficient, but you're thinking like a technician, not like a business owner. You need to understand that your time has value, and you need to charge accordingly." She was right. I'd been drastically undercharging for my services, afraid that higher prices would drive customers away. Helen helped me research market rates and develop a proper pricing structure. Within 2 months, I'd doubled my hourly rate from $25 to $50, and instead of losing customers, I found that people took me more seriously. The lawyer David Kim taught me about contracts and liability. You're providing valuable services to businesses that depend on their technology, he explained while I was setting up his new network. What happens if something goes wrong? What if you accidentally delete important files? You need to protect yourself legally, but you also need to guarantee your work professionally. David helped me draft my first professional service contracts and introduced me to business insurance. It seemed like an expensive luxury at the time, $150 per month for liability coverage, but it immediately changed how potential clients perceived me. I wasn't just some kid with a toolbox anymore. I was a legitimate business professional with proper documentation and insurance backing. The most transformative client relationship began in April 2013 when I received a call from Dr. Sarah Martinez, a pediatrician who ran a small practice with 3 other doctors. Their computer system had crashed completely, taking with it patient records, appointment schedules, and billing information. The company that had originally installed their system wanted $3,000 to recover the data and another $5,000 to upgrade their entire network. I can't afford $8,000 right now, Dr. Martinez told me when I arrived at her office, but I can't afford to lose all this patient data either. The other company says our system is too old to be worth fixing, that we need to start over completely. I spent 4 hours diagnosing their system and discovered that the problem wasn't hardware failure at all. It was a corrupted database that could be rebuilt using backup files they didn't even know they had. By the end of the day, I'd restored 95% of their data and identified the simple maintenance procedures that would prevent the same problem from recurring. "How much do I owe you?" Dr. Martinez asked as I packed up my equipment. I'd planned to charge her $200 for the 4 hours of work, but something made me pause. This wasn't just a computer repair job. This was a small business that employed 12 people and served hundreds of families in our community. My work had literally saved their practice from potential closure. "For today's emergency recovery, $300, I said. "But Dr. Martinez, with respect, your technology infrastructure is a disaster waiting to happen again. What you really need is ongoing IT support. Someone who can maintain your systems, implement proper backup procedures, and plan for future growth." She leaned back in her chair, studying me carefully. "Marcus, I'm a pediatrician, not a technology expert. I need someone I can trust to handle all of this so I can focus on taking care of children. What would that look like?" That conversation led to my first managed services contract, a monthly fee of $800 to provide comprehensive IT support for Dr. Martinez's practice. Within 6 months, I'd modernized their entire system, implemented cloud-based backups, and set up a patient portal that allowed families to schedule appointments and access records online. The practice's efficiency improved dramatically, and Dr. Martinez began referring me to other medical practices in Phoenix. By the end of 2013, I had 12 monthly managed services clients and was earning more than $4,000 per month, more than Tommy was making at Precision Manufacturing. But I didn't share this information with my family. The wounds from that December dinner were still too fresh, and I was determined to let my results speak for themselves when the time was right. The real breakthrough came in early 2014, when Dr. Martinez introduced me to her brother-in-law, Michael Torres, who owned a small manufacturing company called Southwest Precision Components. Michael's business produced specialized parts for aerospace and defense contractors, and their entire operation depended on computer-controlled machinery and sophisticated design software. "Our IT guy just quit to move to California," Michael explained during our first meeting. "He left us with a mess of incompatible systems, outdated software, and no documentation. We're falling behind on orders because our computers can't talk to each other properly." Southwest Precision Components was unlike any client I'd worked with before. Instead of simple office computers and basic networks, they had industrial workstations running specialized CAD software, automated machinery controlled by proprietary programs, and security requirements driven by their defense contracts. The previous IT administrator had apparently been overwhelmed by the complexity and had implemented Band-Aid solutions that created more problems than they solved. I spent 3 weeks studying their systems, researching industrial networking protocols, and learning about the specific software they used for design and manufacturing. It was the most challenging technical project I'd ever undertaken, but also the most exciting. This wasn't just about fixing computers. This was about optimizing an entire manufacturing operation. The solution I proposed was comprehensive. Integrate all their systems onto a unified network, upgrade their design software to the latest versions, implement automated backup procedures for both design files and machine programming, and establish security protocols that met their defense contractor requirements. The project would take 2 months and cost $25,000 in equipment and services. Michael looked at my proposal and whistled softly. "Marcus, this is more than we planned to spend, but honestly, it's less than half what the big consulting firms quoted us. Are you sure you can handle a project this complex?" It was a fair question. I was 25 years old with no formal business experience beyond my small client base. I'd never managed a project of this scope or worked with industrial systems. But I'd spent months preparing for exactly this kind of opportunity, studying everything I could about manufacturing IT and building relationships with vendors who could provide the specialized equipment I'd need. "Torres," I said, "I can't promise it will be easy, and I can't promise there won't be challenges along the way, but I can promise that I'll work harder than anyone else you could hire, and I'll stay with the project until it's done right. If you're willing to take a chance on me, I'll make sure you don't regret it." The Southwest Precision Components project became the foundation of everything that followed. Over 2 months, I learned more about business operations, project management, and industrial technology than I had in 4 years of college. I made mistakes, some costly and embarrassing, but I also developed solutions that exceeded Michael's expectations. The automated backup system I implemented saved them from a catastrophic data loss when their main server failed 6 months later. The network integration I designed improved their production efficiency by 23%, allowing them to take on additional contracts. Most importantly, the security protocols I established qualified them for a new tier of defense contracting that significantly increased their revenue. By the end of 2014, Southwest Precision Components was paying me $2,500 per month for ongoing IT management, and Michael Torres had become one of my strongest advocates in the Phoenix business community. He referred me to 3 other manufacturing companies, and suddenly I was specializing in industrial IT consulting, a niche I'd never planned to enter, but that perfectly combined my technical skills with real-world business impact. The transformation in my personal life was equally dramatic. I'd moved to a larger apartment, bought a reliable used car, and even started saving money for the first time in my life. More importantly, I'd gained confidence in my ability to solve complex problems and deliver real value to serious businesses. I wasn't just fixing computers anymore, I was helping companies operate more efficiently and profitably. But perhaps the most significant change was how I thought about myself and my future. The shy, uncertain young man who'd been crushed by his family's criticism had evolved into someone who could walk into a manufacturing facility, assess complex technical problems, and propose solutions that business owners trusted enough to invest tens of thousands of dollars to implement. I still thought about my family's words that night in December 2012. Sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and hear my father's voice calling me useless, or remember the look of disappointment in my mother's eyes. But instead of crushing me, these memories had become fuel for an ambition I was just beginning to understand. By Christmas 2014, exactly 2 years after that devastating family dinner, I was earning more than $8,000 per month and had a waiting list of potential clients. I was invited to industry conferences, quoted in local business publications, and respected by business owners who had decades more experience than I did. I still hadn't spoken to my family since moving out, but I heard updates through mutual friends and neighbors. Tommy had been promoted again at Precision Manufacturing and was now making $32 an hour. He'd married Jennifer Morrison in a lavish ceremony and bought a house in one of Phoenix's nicer suburbs. Uncle Pete had been promoted to quality control manager. My sister Sarah was still working at the salon, talking about maybe going back to school someday. As I sat in my apartment on Christmas Eve, reviewing the year's financial records and planning for 2015, I realized that I'd reached a crossroads. I could continue building my consulting business, gradually expanding and becoming increasingly successful within the Phoenix technology market. It was a good path, stable, profitable, and personally satisfying, but something inside me wanted more. The hurt and anger from that family dinner had evolved into something more complex, a desire not just to succeed, but to succeed so dramatically that even my harshest critics would have to acknowledge what I'd accomplished. I wanted to build something significant enough that when people talked about successful entrepreneurs in Phoenix, my name would be part of the conversation. I opened a new document on my computer and began typing. 5-year plan, building something bigger. I had no idea then that this document would become the blueprint for a company that would eventually employ over 200 people and generate annual revenues exceeding $50 million. All I knew was that I was ready to stop proving I wasn't a failure and start proving I could be genuinely extraordinary. The wilderness years were ending. It was time to build an empire. The call that changed everything came on a Tuesday morning in March 2015. I was in my apartment reviewing proposals for 3 potential new clients when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Marcus Williams, this is Rebecca Chen from Apex Industries in Tempe. Michael Torres recommended you for a project that's, well, it's bigger than anything we've done before. Apex Industries was a name I recognized from the Phoenix Business Journal, a mid-sized manufacturing company specializing in precision aerospace components. They supplied parts to Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and several defense contractors. This wasn't another small business looking for basic IT support. This was a serious industrial operation. What kind of project are you looking at? I asked, grabbing a notepad. Complete digital transformation, Rebecca replied. We're expanding to a second facility, implementing new quality management systems, and integrating our operations with our biggest client's supply chain software. Our current IT infrastructure can't handle the complexity. We need someone who understands both technology and manufacturing. The meeting was scheduled for Friday at 2 p.m. I spent the entire week preparing, researching Apex Industries, studying their public financial reports, and learning everything I could about supply chain integration software. This wasn't just another client consultation. This was potentially the opportunity that could transform my one-man consulting business into something much larger. Apex Industries occupied a sprawling complex in Tempe's industrial district. The main building was modern and impressive, with floor-to-ceiling windows displaying sophisticated manufacturing equipment. As I walked through the lobby, I noticed the wall of certifications: ISO 901, AS 9100, various defense contractor qualifications. This was serious business. Rebecca Chen turned out to be the chief operations officer, a sharp woman in her early 40s who had clearly worked her way up through the manufacturing ranks. She led me through a tour of their facility that was both fascinating and intimidating. Computer-controlled machining centers worth hundreds of thousands of dollars each, quality control stations with measurement equipment accurate to micrometers, and production lines coordinated by complex scheduling software. Our current IT setup is a patchwork, Rebecca explained as we walked. When we started 15 years ago, we bought systems as we needed them. Now we have manufacturing software that doesn't talk to our inventory system, quality control data that has to be manually entered into our reporting system, and scheduling that requires 3 different programs to coordinate a single production run. The scope of their challenge was staggering. They needed to integrate manufacturing execution systems, quality management software, inventory control, customer relationship management, financial reporting, and supply chain coordination into a unified platform. Additionally, their new facility needed to be designed from the ground up with integrated systems, and everything had to meet strict security and compliance requirements for defense contractors. What's your timeline? I asked, already calculating the complexity in my head. 18 months, Rebecca said. We break ground on the new facility in 6 months, and we need full integration with our primary client systems by September 2016. This contract represents 40% of our projected revenue for the next 5 years. She led me to a conference room where 3 other executives were waiting: James Patterson, the CEO, Linda Harrison, the CFO, and Robert Kim, the head of quality assurance. For the next 2 hours, they detailed their requirements, current systems, and long-term growth plans. The project they were describing would require not just technical expertise, but project management skills, vendor coordination, and the ability to work with teams of specialists from multiple technology companies. Marcus, James Patterson said as the meeting concluded, I'll be direct with you. This project is critical to our company's future. We've gotten quotes from IBM, Accenture, and 3 other major consulting firms. The lowest bid was $2.8 million. The highest was $4.2 million. All of them want 18 to 24-month timelines. He paused, studying my reaction. Michael Torres says you delivered a project for his company that exceeded expectations, on time and under budget, but his operation is maybe 10% the size of what we're talking about here. How do we know you can handle something this complex? It was a fair question and one I'd been asking myself since Rebecca's initial phone call. I was 26 years old with 2 years of independent consulting experience. I'd never managed a multi-million-dollar project or coordinated with enterprise software vendors. By any reasonable measure, I was completely unqualified for this opportunity. But I'd learned something important during my Southwest Precision Components project. Sometimes being unqualified is actually an advantage. The big consulting firms would assign teams of specialists who'd each handle discrete pieces of the puzzle, with coordination happening at a management level that was often disconnected from the actual implementation. I would be involved in every detail, personally responsible for every decision, and accountable for every outcome. "Mr. Patterson," I said, "you're right that I haven't managed a project this large before, but I've spent 2 years learning how manufacturing operations actually work, not just how they're supposed to work according to textbooks. The big consulting firms will give you proven methodologies and standardized solutions. I'll give you something that's designed specifically for your operation, your challenges, and your goals." I opened my laptop and pulled up a preliminary analysis I'd prepared based on our conversation. "Based on what you've told me, I think the other firms are over-engineering your solution. You don't need a complete overhaul of every system. You need strategic integration of existing systems with targeted upgrades where they'll provide the most value." For the next 30 minutes, I outlined an approach that focused on creating compatibility between their current systems rather than replacing everything, implementing new capabilities in phases to minimize disruption, and designing the integration to be scalable as their business grew. My proposed budget was $1.4 million, half of the lowest competing bid, with a 15-month timeline. "This is interesting," Linda Harrison said, reviewing my analysis. "But Marcus, no offense, you're one person. How do you handle a project this size without a team?" "That's actually the key to making this work," I replied. "Instead of building a permanent team, I partner with specialists for each component. I work with a database expert in Seattle who specializes in manufacturing systems, a network security consultant in Denver who handles defense contractor requirements, and a software integration firm in Austin that focuses on supply chain systems. I coordinate everything, but each piece is handled by the best person for that specific job." The room was quiet for a moment. Finally, James Patterson spoke. "Marcus, your approach is either brilliant or completely reckless, probably both. Give us 2 weeks to consider all our options." Those 2 weeks were agonizing. This project represented more than just revenue. It was the opportunity to prove that my unconventional approach could compete with established consulting firms. If I succeeded, it would establish my credibility for even larger projects. If I failed, it would probably end my consulting career before it really began. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. "Marcus, this is James Patterson. We'd like to move forward with your proposal, with one modification. We want you to hire a full-time project coordinator to work directly with you. Someone with enterprise project management experience who can help ensure we stay on schedule and within budget." I agreed immediately, though privately I worried about the additional cost and complexity of bringing on an employee. I'd been operating as a sole proprietor for 3 years, responsible only for my own work, and accountable only to myself. Adding an employee meant payroll, benefits, management responsibilities, and sharing control of client relationships. The project coordinator I hired was Lisa Rodriguez, a 32-year-old former project manager from Intel who'd left the corporate world to raise her children and was looking for a role with more flexibility. Lisa brought organizational skills and enterprise experience that I desperately needed, but more importantly, she brought a different perspective on business development. "Marcus," she said during her second week, "you're thinking too small about this Apex project. Yes, it's a great opportunity to prove your capabilities, but it's also a chance to build something sustainable. Right now, you're selling your time and expertise. What you should be building is a company that can deliver value even when you're not personally involved in every detail." Lisa's observation was the catalyst for the most important strategic decision of my career. Instead of completing the Apex project as Marcus Williams Consulting, I would use it to launch a real technology services company. We would hire additional specialists, develop standardized methodologies, and create systems that could be replicated for other clients. In June 2015, I filed incorporation papers for Phoenix Digital Solutions, with myself as CEO and Lisa as Vice President of Operations. Our mission statement was simple: helping manufacturing companies leverage technology to improve efficiency, quality, and profitability. Our initial team consisted of me, Lisa, and 3 contracted specialists, who would work on specific components of the Apex project. The Apex implementation began in earnest in July 2015. The first phase involved detailed analysis of their existing systems, mapping data flows, and identifying integration points. What we discovered was even more complex than I'd anticipated. 15 years of ad hoc technology purchases had created a maze of incompatible databases, redundant processes, and manual workarounds that consumed enormous amounts of employee time. But complexity also created opportunity. Every inefficiency we identified represented potential savings. Every manual process we automated freed up employees for higher-value work. Every integration we implemented reduced errors and improved decision-making. As we documented our findings, it became clear that our project would deliver returns far exceeding its cost. The real test came in October 2015, when we began implementing the first major system integration. We were connecting their manufacturing execution system to their inventory management software, a process that required migrating 10 years of production data, establishing new data validation rules, and training operators on modified workflows. If something went wrong, it could shut down production for days and cost Apex hundreds of thousands of dollars in missed deliveries. I spent the week before implementation sleeping maybe 3 hours per night, triple-checking every configuration, testing every scenario I could imagine, and preparing contingency plans for every possible failure. Lisa coordinated with department managers to ensure everyone understood the new procedures. Our database specialist ran final validation tests from Seattle while staying available for emergency support. The implementation began at 6 p.m. on a Friday, when production shut down for the weekend. By Sunday evening, we'd successfully migrated all historical data, configured the new integration, and tested every critical function. When operators arrived Monday morning, the system worked exactly as designed. Production data flowed automatically from the shop floor to inventory management, eliminating 2 hours of daily manual data entry and providing real-time visibility into work in progress. Rebecca Chen called me Monday afternoon with excitement I'd never heard in her voice. "Marcus, this is incredible. Our production managers can see actual inventory levels instead of estimates from last week. Our schedulers can track job progress in real time instead of waiting for daily reports. We've been in business for 15 years, and we've never had this kind of operational visibility." But the real vindication came 2 weeks later, when James Patterson called with news that would change everything. "Marcus, I just got off the phone with our primary client, the one whose supply chain systems we're integrating with. They were so impressed with our new data accuracy and reporting capabilities that they want to expand our contract by 30%. That's an additional $8 million in annual revenue, starting immediately." He paused, and I could hear the smile in his voice. They also asked who our IT consultant was. Apparently they're having similar integration challenges with other suppliers. Would Phoenix Digital Solutions be interested in additional projects? In that moment, sitting in my apartment that had served as corporate headquarters for Phoenix Digital Solutions, I realized that everything had changed. We weren't just completing a single project anymore. We were building a reputation that was opening doors to opportunities I'd never imagined. The strategic pivot from individual consultant to company founder was beginning to pay dividends that exceeded my most optimistic projections. But as I hung up the phone and looked out at the Phoenix skyline, I also realized that the real work was just beginning. Managing one complex project was challenging enough. Managing multiple projects for sophisticated clients would require capabilities, systems, and team members that I was only beginning to understand how to build. The transformation from Marcus Williams, the young man his family had dismissed as useless, to Marcus Williams, CEO of a growing technology services company, was accelerating faster than I'd ever anticipated. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I began to wonder if my success was becoming significant enough that even my family might start to take notice. By January 2016, Phoenix Digital Solutions had grown from a concept to a company with 12 employees, 3 major clients, and monthly revenues exceeding $180,000. What had started as my desperate attempt to prove my family wrong had evolved into something I'd never anticipated, a legitimate business that was solving real problems for serious companies. But success brought new challenges I wasn't prepared for. Managing a team of specialists was completely different from working alone. Coordinating multiple complex projects simultaneously required systems and processes I'd never needed as a solo consultant. Most importantly, the level of responsibility I now carried, not just for my own success but for the livelihoods of 12 other people, sometimes kept me awake at night. The wake-up call came in February 2016, during what should have been a routine client meeting. We were presenting our progress on a manufacturing optimization project for Desert Components, a aerospace parts supplier in Scottsdale. The client was Mark Stevens, a demanding but fair CEO who'd hired us based on our success with Apex Industries. Mark said, reviewing our quarterly report, "Your technical work is excellent as always, but I'm concerned about your project management. 3 deliverables have been delayed in the past month. Your team coordination seems inconsistent, and frankly, you look exhausted. Are you sure Phoenix Digital Solutions can handle the scale of work you're taking on?" He was right, and I knew it. I'd been trying to maintain personal oversight of every project detail while also handling business development, hiring, and strategic planning. I was working 16-hour days and still falling behind. Worse, my attempts to control everything were actually slowing down my team's productivity. "Mark," I said, "I appreciate your honesty. You're right that we've had some coordination challenges. What specific changes would you like to see?" "I want to see you acting like a CEO, not like a super consultant who happens to employ other people. Delegate the technical work to your specialists and focus on making sure Phoenix Digital Solutions can deliver consistently at scale. If you can't make that transition, you'll always be limited by your personal capacity." That conversation forced me to confront a fundamental question. What kind of company did I want Phoenix Digital Solutions to become? I could continue operating as an elite boutique consultancy, taking on only projects I could personally oversee. Or I could build something larger and more systematic, with standardized processes that didn't depend on my direct involvement in every decision. Liza Rodriguez had been pushing me toward the second option since joining the company. "Marcus," she said during one of our weekly strategy meetings, "you're the bottleneck in our growth. Every client wants to work directly with you. Every technical decision requires your approval. Every new project gets designed from scratch based on your personal assessment. We need to systematize what you do so the company can grow beyond your individual limitations." The solution we developed was both simple and revolutionary. We would create the Phoenix Method, a standardized approach to manufacturing technology integration that could be executed by teams of specialists without requiring my constant oversight. Instead of designing custom solutions for each client, we would offer proven methodologies that had been refined through multiple implementations. Developing the Phoenix Method required documenting everything I'd learned through trial and error over the past 3 years. Liza led the effort, interviewing me for hours about decision-making criteria, risk assessment procedures, and problem-solving approaches. We analyzed our most successful projects to identify common patterns and best practices. We created flowcharts, checklists, and standard operating procedures for everything from initial client assessment to final system testing. The first test of our systematized approach came in April 2016, when we were hired by Mountain Manufacturing, a Colorado-based company that produced precision components for medical devices. For the first time, I assigned the project to Jennifer Walsh, one of our senior consultants, with instructions to follow the Phoenix Method protocols without seeking my approval for routine decisions. I was terrified. Jennifer was competent and experienced, but this was a $800,000 project with a client who had specifically requested Phoenix Digital Solutions based on our reputation. If something went wrong, it could damage relationships we'd spent months building, but if the Phoenix Method worked, it would prove that we could deliver quality results without my personal involvement in every detail. 3 months later, Jennifer's project was completed 2 weeks ahead of schedule and $50,000 under budget. Mountain Manufacturing's CEO, Patricia Anderson, called to say it was the smoothest technology implementation her company had ever experienced. More importantly, Jennifer had documented 12 improvements to our standard procedures based on challenges she'd encountered and solutions she'd developed. "Marcus," Jennifer said during our project debrief, "the Phoenix Method works, but it's not just about following procedures. It's about understanding the principles behind the procedures so you can adapt when unexpected situations arise. You've created something that's both systematic and flexible." By the end of 2016, we had refined the Phoenix Method through 8 major implementations. We'd proven that our approach could be executed by different team members while maintaining consistent quality. More importantly, we'd created intellectual property that differentiated Phoenix Digital Solutions from both large consulting firms and individual specialists. Our growth accelerated dramatically. Monthly revenues exceeded $300,000 by December 2016. We'd hired 23 employees, including specialists in cybersecurity, data analytics, and supply chain optimization. We'd moved from my apartment to a 4,000-square-foot office in Tempe's technology corridor. We'd established partnerships with major software vendors that gave us preferred pricing and technical support. But the most significant development was the reputation we were building within Arizona's manufacturing community. Phoenix Digital Solutions was becoming known as the company that could solve complex integration challenges that stumped larger consulting firms. We were invited to speak at industry conferences, quoted in trade publications, and recommended by clients to their business partners. The breakthrough that would eventually bring me face-to-face with my family's employer came in January 2017, when we received an inquiry from Chicago Manufacturing Consortium, a private equity firm that specialized in acquiring and optimizing mid-sized manufacturing companies. They managed a portfolio of 12 companies across the Southwest, including several in Arizona. "Mr. Williams," said David Blackstone, CMC's managing partner, during our initial phone conversation, "we've been tracking Phoenix Digital Solutions for the past year. Your work with Apex Industries and Mountain Manufacturing has been noticed by our portfolio companies and our industry contacts. We're interested in discussing a strategic partnership." The partnership CMC proposed was unlike anything we'd considered before. Instead of working with individual clients on discrete projects, we would provide ongoing technology optimization services to their entire portfolio. We would standardize systems across multiple companies, implement best practices developed at one facility across other locations, and help coordinate supply chain integration between portfolio companies. The total value of this partnership could exceed $15 million over 3 years, David explained during our meeting at CMC's Phoenix office. But it would require Phoenix Digital Solutions to expand significantly. You'd need dedicated teams for each portfolio company, project managers who can coordinate across multiple facilities, and the infrastructure to support simultaneous implementations. The scale was both exciting and intimidating. $15 million in contracted revenue would make Phoenix Digital Solutions one of the largest technology consulting firms in Arizona. But it would also require us to grow from 23 employees to over 60 within 18 months, establish offices in multiple cities, and manage the complexity of coordinating dozens of simultaneous projects. "David," I said, "this opportunity is exactly what we've been building toward, but I need to be honest about our capabilities. Phoenix Digital Solutions has never managed projects at this scale. How do we ensure we can deliver what you're expecting?" "That's exactly why we want to work with you," David replied. "The large consulting firms can handle the scale, but they don't understand manufacturing operations the way you do. Small specialists understand the technical details, but they can't coordinate enterprise-level implementations. You've found the sweet spot between technical expertise and business sophistication." He leaned forward, his expression becoming more serious. "Marcus, CMC invests in companies and management teams that we believe can scale dramatically. We think Phoenix Digital Solutions has that potential, but only if you're willing to make the transition from successful small business to significant regional player." Over the next month, Lisa and I developed the most comprehensive business plan we'd ever created. We analyzed staffing requirements, technology infrastructure needs, and financial projections for different growth scenarios. We researched office space in 4 cities, identified potential key hires, and created detailed timelines for scaling our operations. The plan we presented to CMC was ambitious. Phoenix Digital Solutions would establish regional offices in Denver, Albuquerque, and Las Vegas, hire 47 additional employees, and implement our own internal systems to coordinate multi-site project management. We would also develop Phoenix Method 2.0, an enhanced version of our standardized approach designed specifically for portfolio-wide implementations. "The total investment required is $2.3 million, I explained during our presentation. Phoenix Digital Solutions will provide $800,000 from retained earnings and reinvested profits. We're requesting a $1.5 million line of credit to fund the remaining expansion costs." David studied our projections carefully. "Marcus, these numbers assume you can successfully hire and integrate 47 new employees while maintaining quality standards across multiple simultaneous projects. That's a massive organizational challenge. How do you plan to maintain your company culture and service quality during such rapid growth?" It was the question I'd been dreading, because I wasn't entirely sure of the answer myself. Phoenix Digital Solutions had succeeded because of close collaboration, personal relationships, and my ability to maintain oversight of critical decisions. Scaling to 60 employees across 4 cities would require management systems and organizational structures we'd never needed before. David, I said, you're right that rapid growth carries risks, but we've already proven that the Phoenix method can deliver consistent results when executed by different team members. Our plan is to replicate our Phoenix headquarters structure in each regional office, with local managers who've been trained in our methodologies and who maintain regular coordination with our central team. The approval came 2 weeks later, along with terms that exceeded our expectations. CMC would provide not just the $1.5 million line of credit, but also strategic support for recruiting, introductions to potential clients outside their portfolio, and access to their network of industry experts. In return, they wanted preferred pricing for their portfolio companies and the right of first refusal if we ever decided to seek additional investment partners. Marcus, David said during our contract signing, this partnership positions Phoenix Digital Solutions for growth that could make you one of the dominant technology consulting firms in the Southwest. But more importantly, it establishes you as a serious player in the manufacturing technology space. The companies you'll be working with include some of the most sophisticated operations in the region. As I signed the agreement that would transform Phoenix Digital Solutions from a successful small business into a significant regional company, I couldn't help but think about how far I'd traveled from that devastating family dinner 4 years earlier. The young man they'd dismissed as useless was now building something that would soon employ more people than worked at precision manufacturing. But I also realized that my family still had no idea what I'd been building. For 4 years, I'd focused entirely on proving them wrong through success, but I'd never actually shown them what I'd accomplished. They probably still thought I was fixing computers for elderly customers, completely unaware that Phoenix Digital Solutions was becoming a major player in Arizona's business community. That realization planted a seed of an idea that would eventually lead to the most satisfying moment of my entire entrepreneurial journey. But first, I had to successfully execute the largest expansion in our company's history, prove that we could deliver on our promises to CMC, and establish Phoenix Digital Solutions as the kind of company that even my skeptical family couldn't dismiss. The expansion of Phoenix Digital Solutions throughout 2017 was like watching a controlled explosion in slow motion. Every month brought new challenges that tested our systems, our people, and my leadership in ways I'd never experienced. By October, we had 41 employees across 4 cities, managed 17 simultaneous projects, and generated monthly revenues exceeding $850,000. But the real transformation wasn't just in our size, it was in the quality of opportunities that were coming our way. The Chicago Manufacturing Consortium partnership had opened doors to clients and projects that would have been impossible to access as a small local consultancy. We were no longer competing for contracts. Sophisticated companies were seeking us out based on recommendations from their industry peers. The project that would eventually connect me to precision manufacturing began with a phone call from an unexpected source. Dr. Amanda Foster, the Chief Technology Officer at Southwestern Aerospace Alliance, reached out in November 2017 with what she described as the most complex supply chain integration challenge in our company's history. Southwestern Aerospace Alliance was a consortium of 12 manufacturing companies that collaborated on large defense and commercial aerospace contracts. Their member companies ranged from small precision parts suppliers to major assembly operations, and they coordinated production across multiple states to deliver complete aircraft components to Boeing, Airbus, and defense contractors. Mr. Williams, Dr. Foster explained during our initial video conference, our current project involves coordinating the production of next-generation aircraft engine components across all 12 member companies. The technical specifications are incredibly demanding, the quality requirements are absolute, and the delivery timeline is non-negotiable. Most importantly, this project requires real-time coordination between our members' production systems. She paused, and I could see the stress in her expression. We've had preliminary discussions with IBM, Accenture, and McKinsey. Their proposed solutions are technically sound, but they don't understand the manufacturing realities our members face. We need someone who can bridge the gap between enterprise software capabilities and shop floor operations. The scope of what Southwestern Aerospace Alliance needed was staggering. They wanted to create a unified production management system that would allow real-time coordination between 12 independent companies, each with different equipment, software systems, and operational procedures. Parts manufactured in Phoenix would need to integrate seamlessly with components produced in Albuquerque, Denver, and Las Vegas, Quality control data from one facility would need to automatically trigger adjustments in other facilities. Production schedules would need to dynamically adapt based on real-time progress updates from multiple locations. Dr. Foster, I said, what you're describing is essentially creating a virtual mega factory from 12 independent operations. It's technically possible, but it would require unprecedented levels of systems integration and operational coordination. What's driving the need for this level of complexity? The defense contract we're pursuing represents $2.8 billion in revenue over 7 years, she replied, but the specifications require production capabilities that no single company in our alliance possesses independently. We can only deliver if we can coordinate our operations as seamlessly as if we were divisions of a single corporation. The meeting concluded with an invitation to submit a comprehensive proposal, including technical specifications, implementation timeline, and budget projections. Dr. Foster made it clear that this would be the largest and most visible project in Southwestern Aerospace Alliance's history, with implications for their ability to compete for future major contracts. Over the next 3 weeks, Lisa Rodriguez and I assembled the most detailed proposal Phoenix Digital Solutions had ever created. We analyzed the technical requirements for integrating 12 different manufacturing operations, researched the software platforms capable of handling real-time coordination at this scale, and developed implementation strategies that would minimize disruption to ongoing production. The proposal we submitted was 127 pages long and requested $4.2 million over 18 months. More importantly, it outlined an approach that would give Southwestern Aerospace Alliance capabilities that didn't exist anywhere else in the aerospace industry: the ability to coordinate complex manufacturing across multiple companies as efficiently as if they were operating a single integrated facility. Marcus, Dr. Foster said during our presentation to the Alliance's board of directors, your technical approach is innovative and your implementation strategy is realistic, but this project will make Phoenix Digital Solutions responsible for coordination systems that affect $2.8 billion in contracted revenue. Are you confident your company can handle that level of responsibility? It was a fair question and one that kept me awake for several nights before the presentation. 4 years earlier, I'd been a solo consultant working from my apartment. Now I was being asked to manage systems that would determine whether 12 companies could successfully deliver on the largest contract in their collective history. Dr. Foster, I replied, Phoenix Digital Solutions has never managed a project of this exact scope, but we've proven our ability to coordinate complex manufacturing operations across multiple facilities. What differentiates our approach is that we understand both the technology requirements and the operational realities your member companies face. We don't just implement software, we optimize the entire production ecosystem. The contract award came in January 2018, along with a timeline that would test every system and capability Phoenix Digital Solutions had developed. The Southwestern Aerospace Alliance project required us to expand our team by another 23 specialists, establish temporary project offices in 3 additional cities, and coordinate with software vendors, equipment manufacturers, and aerospace quality certification agencies. But the most significant aspect of the project was the visibility it would provide within Arizona's manufacturing community. Southwestern Aerospace Alliance's member companies included some of the most sophisticated operations in the region, and their suppliers, customers, and industry partners would all be watching to see if Phoenix Digital Solutions could deliver on our ambitious promises. Among those member companies was Mountain West Precision, a Tucson-based manufacturer that specialized in complex machined components for aerospace applications. Their CEO, Robert Chen, had worked in Arizona manufacturing for over 20 years and knew virtually every significant operation in the state. Marcus, Robert said during one of our early project meetings, I've been watching Phoenix Digital Solutions' growth over the past 2 years. You've built something impressive, but this alliance project is going to put you on the map in ways you might not expect. Success here means you'll be competing for contracts with companies that have been industry leaders for decades. He was referring to companies like Precision Manufacturing, the same company where my father, uncle, and cousin worked. Robert's comment was the first time I'd seriously considered that Phoenix Digital Solutions might eventually become large enough and successful enough to operate in the same markets as my family's employer. The Alliance project implementation began in March 2018 and immediately proved more complex than even our detailed planning had anticipated. Coordinating software installations across 12 facilities while maintaining ongoing production required choreography that would have challenged a ballet company. Every system change at one facility had to be tested for compatibility with 11 other operations. Every data integration had to account for different equipment configurations, varying quality standards, and unique operational procedures. The breakthrough came in June 2018 when we successfully completed the first phase of integration between 4 member companies. For the first time in aerospace manufacturing history, production data flowed in real time between independent facilities, allowing coordinated scheduling, automated quality control sharing, and dynamic inventory management across multiple locations. "This is remarkable," said Jennifer Martinez, the production manager at Desert Aerospace Components. "I can see exactly what stage every component is at, regardless of which facility is producing it. Our schedulers can coordinate delivery timing across all 4 companies as if we were managing a single production line." But the real validation came 2 weeks later, when a critical quality issue at one facility triggered automatic notifications and production adjustments at 3 other locations, preventing a potential delay that could have cost the alliance $2.3 million in penalty fees. Foster called me that evening with excitement that was unprecedented in our professional relationship. "Marcus, what happened today proves that your approach works at scale. We just demonstrated coordination capabilities that don't exist anywhere else in our industry." The other alliance members are asking when we can expand the integration to all 12 facilities. By September 2018, the full Southwestern Aerospace Alliance integration was operational, and the results exceeded everyone's expectations. Production efficiency across all 12 facilities improved by an average of 31%. Quality control accuracy increased by 22%. Most importantly, the alliance was able to begin production on their $2.8 billion defense contract 2 months ahead of schedule. The success generated attention throughout Arizona's manufacturing community and beyond. Phoenix Digital Solutions was featured in Manufacturing Today, Industry Week, and Aerospace Engineering magazines. I was invited to speak at the National Manufacturing Technology Conference and the Aerospace Suppliers Association annual meeting. Most significantly, we began receiving inquiries from companies across the Southwest who wanted similar integration capabilities. Among those inquiries was one that would bring me face-to-face with the company that employed my family members. In November 2018, I received a call from Patricia Williams, no relation, the procurement director at Westcorp Industries, a holding company that owns 17 manufacturing operations across Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada. "Mr. Williams," Patricia explained, "Westcorp has been following Phoenix Digital Solutions' work with Southwestern Aerospace Alliance. We're interested in implementing similar coordination capabilities across our portfolio companies. One of our facilities is particularly interested in your services, Precision Manufacturing in Phoenix." The name hit me like electricity. Precision Manufacturing, where my father had worked for over 25 years, where my Uncle Pete was quality control manager, where my cousin Tommy had built his career and married the CEO's daughter. The same company my family had wanted me to join as an entry-level IT worker 6 years earlier. "Tell me more about Precision Manufacturing's specific needs," I said, working to keep my voice steady despite the adrenaline rushing through my system. "They're facing increasing pressure from their major clients to improve delivery reliability and quality consistency," Patricia replied. "Their current systems are outdated, their coordination with other Westcorp facilities is minimal, and they're losing contracts to competitors with more sophisticated capabilities." David Morrison, their CEO, specifically requested a consultation with Phoenix Digital Solutions. David Morrison, the same CEO whose daughter had married my cousin Tommy, the man who ran the company my family considered the pinnacle of career success. The irony was almost overwhelming. 6 years after my family had dismissed my technology career as unrealistic, the CEO of their company was specifically requesting my services. "I'd be happy to schedule a consultation," I said. "When would Mr. Morrison like to meet?" As I scheduled the meeting that would bring me back to Precision Manufacturing for the first time since my father had tried to get me hired there as an entry-level employee, I realized that everything was about to come full circle. The young man they'd called useless was about to walk into their workplace as the CEO of a company they needed help from. But this wasn't about revenge or vindication anymore. Over 6 years of building Phoenix Digital Solutions, I'd learned that true success wasn't about proving other people wrong. It was about creating value, solving problems, and building something meaningful. Whatever happened at Precision Manufacturing would be about helping them improve their operations, not about settling old scores with my family. Still, I couldn't deny the poetic justice of the situation. The computer games they'd dismissed, The unrealistic dreams they'd mocked, and the useless skills they'd criticized had led to this moment. David Morrison, CEO of Precision Manufacturing, specifically requesting the expertise of Marcus Williams, CEO of Phoenix Digital Solutions. The morning of December 14, 2018, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, adjusting my tie and trying to calm the nervous energy that had kept me awake most of the night. In 3 hours, I would walk through the doors of Precision Manufacturing for the first time in 6 years, not as Robert Williams' disappointing son looking for entry-level work, but as Marcus Williams, CEO of Phoenix Digital Solutions, invited by their leadership to solve problems they couldn't handle internally. I'd chosen my outfit carefully: a charcoal gray suit from Hugo Boss, Italian leather shoes, and a briefcase that cost more than my father's monthly salary. It wasn't about showing off, it was about projecting the competence and success that would make it impossible for anyone to dismiss me as the confused young man they remembered. Lisa Rodriguez rode with me to the meeting, carrying copies of our preliminary assessment and a detailed proposal we'd prepared based on Westcorp's initial briefing. As my vice president of operations, she'd insisted on attending to ensure we maintained professional focus regardless of any personal dynamics that might arise. "Marcus," she said as we pulled into Precision Manufacturing's parking lot, "I know this meeting has personal significance, but remember that we're here to solve their operational challenges. Whatever history you have with this place, today you're representing Phoenix Digital Solutions and the interests of our client." She was right, of course. But as I looked at the familiar building where my family had worked for decades, I couldn't help but think about the path that had brought me here. 6 years ago, my father had tried to secure me an entry-level position in their IT department, a job that would have paid $35,000 annually and required me to abandon my entrepreneurial ambitions. Today, I was arriving as the leader of a company that generated more revenue in a single month than that position would have paid in an entire year. The receptionist, a woman in her 50s I didn't recognize, greeted us professionally. "Mr. Williams? Mr. Morrison is expecting you. He'll meet you in the executive conference room." As we walked through the facility, I was surprised by how much it had changed since my last visit. The manufacturing floor had been expanded and modernized with new computer-controlled equipment that looked significantly more sophisticated than what I remembered. But I also noticed signs of the operational challenges that had prompted their call: outdated workstations, manual data entry processes, and coordination bottlenecks that created obvious inefficiencies. David Morrison was waiting in the conference room along with 3 other executives I didn't recognize. He was a distinguished man in his early 60s, with gray hair and the confident bearing of someone who'd built a successful company over decades. When he stood to shake my hand, I saw intelligence and wariness in his eyes. He was clearly evaluating whether the young CEO of Phoenix Digital Solutions could deliver the sophisticated solutions Precision Manufacturing needed. "Mr. Williams," David said, "thank you for making time to meet with us. I've been following Phoenix Digital Solutions' work with the Southwestern Aerospace Alliance, and frankly, what you've accomplished is exactly what we need here at Precision Manufacturing." He gestured to the others at the table. "This is Rebecca Stone, our Chief Operations Officer, Michael Chen, our Head of Production, and Janet Parker, our Quality Assurance Director. They can provide the technical details about our current challenges." For the next hour, they outlined problems that were both familiar and complex. Precision Manufacturing had grown significantly over the past 5 years, but their technology infrastructure hadn't kept pace. They were managing production across 2 facilities using systems that couldn't communicate effectively. Quality control data was tracked manually and inconsistently. Customer orders required coordination between departments that often operated with conflicting information. "The bottom line," Rebecca Stone explained, "is that we're losing contracts to competitors who can provide real-time production tracking, predictive delivery scheduling, and integrated quality reporting. Our customers want visibility and reliability that our current systems simply can't provide." As they described their challenges, I found myself mentally cataloging solutions we'd implemented for similar clients. The problems weren't unique, but the scale and complexity required approaches we'd refined through projects like the Southwestern Aerospace Alliance integration. "Mr. Morrison," I said when they'd finished their presentation, "what you're describing is a comprehensive digital transformation that would affect every aspect of your operations. Based on what I've heard today, I believe Phoenix Digital Solutions can provide the capabilities you need. But I want to be clear about the scope and timeline we're discussing. I opened my laptop and pulled up a preliminary assessment Lisa and I had prepared. Complete integration of your production management, quality control, and customer coordination systems would require approximately 8 months of implementation, during which we'd need to maintain your ongoing operations while gradually migrating to new platforms. David leaned forward, studying the timeline I'd displayed. What kind of investment are we looking at? Based on similar projects, approximately $1.8 million for software, integration services, and staff training, I replied. But the ROI analysis we've completed for comparable clients shows operational savings that typically recover the initial investment within 18 months. The room was quiet for a moment as they absorbed the scale of what I was proposing. Finally, Michael Chen spoke up. Mr. Williams, no offense, but you're young to be making recommendations for a project of this magnitude. What assurance do we have that Phoenix Digital Solutions can deliver what you're promising? It was a fair question, and one I'd answered many times before. Chen, I said, you're right that I'm young, but Phoenix Digital Solutions has successfully completed integration projects for 17 manufacturing companies over the past 3 years. Our clients include Apex Industries, Mountain Manufacturing, and the 12 companies in the Southwestern Aerospace Alliance. I'd be happy to provide references from any of them. I clicked to the next slide, showing production improvement statistics from our recent projects. More importantly, our approach is based on proven methodologies that we've refined through multiple implementations. We don't create custom solutions from scratch. We adapt proven systems to your specific requirements. Janet Parker had been studying our proposal silently throughout the presentation. Mr. Williams, she said, your technical approach looks sound, but implementation is where most of these projects fail. How do you ensure that our production staff can actually use these new systems effectively? Training and change management are built into every phase of our implementation, Lisa replied, speaking for the first time since introductions. We don't just install software and walk away. Our team works alongside your staff for the entire transition period, ensuring that everyone understands not just how to use the new systems, but why the changes improve their daily work. The meeting continued for another hour, with increasingly detailed discussions about technical specifications, implementation timelines, and performance metrics. As we talked, I found myself genuinely impressed by Precision Manufacturing's leadership team. They asked intelligent questions, understood the complexities of what we were proposing, and clearly cared about making decisions that would benefit both their employees and their customers. Finally, David Morrison called for a brief recess and asked to speak with me privately. As the others left the conference room, he remained seated, studying me with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. Marcus, he said, using my first name for the first time, I have to ask you something directly. Are you related to Robert Williams, who works in our machining department? I'd been waiting for this question since scheduling the meeting, but hearing it still created a knot in my stomach. Yes, I said simply. Robert is my father. David nodded slowly. I thought so. The last name plus you look remarkably like he did when he was younger. He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. Your father's a good employee, Marcus. Reliable, skilled, respected by his colleagues, but he's never mentioned that his son runs a technology consulting company. We haven't spoken in 6 years, I admitted. We had some fundamental disagreements about career choices. I see. David's expression became more thoughtful. Marcus, I want you to know that your family relationship doesn't influence my evaluation of Phoenix Digital Solutions one way or the other. We're here because your company has capabilities we need, not because of any personal connections. I appreciate that, Mr. Morrison. Phoenix Digital Solutions has succeeded because we deliver results, not because of family relationships or personal networks. He smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Actually, that's not entirely true. Business is always personal to some degree. The fact that you've built something significant while maintaining your integrity tells me something about your character that I find reassuring. When the others returned, the conversation shifted to next steps and timelines. David explained that Precision Manufacturing would need 2 weeks to review our proposal internally and obtain approval from Westcorp's corporate office. He also mentioned that they'd be checking references with our previous clients and conducting due diligence on Phoenix Digital Solutions' financial stability and project management capabilities. Mr. Williams, he said as the meeting concluded, assuming our reference checks and internal review go well, when could Phoenix Digital Solutions begin implementation? We could start the initial assessment phase in February 2019, I replied. Full implementation would begin in March, with completion targeted for October. As Lisa and I packed our materials and prepared to leave, David walked us to the reception area. Just as we reached the exit, he made a comment that would prove more significant than either of us realized at the time. "Marcus," he said, "if we move forward with this project, there's something you should know. Our employees take pride in working here, and they're protective of Precision Manufacturing's reputation. Some of them might be curious about our decision to hire Phoenix Digital Solutions, especially once they realize the family connection. I hope you're prepared for that level of scrutiny." I assured him that we were accustomed to working in environments where our performance was closely watched, but privately I wondered what he meant about employee curiosity. At the time, I assumed he was referring to general skepticism about outside consultants. I had no idea that word of our meeting was already spreading through the facility, or that my father, uncle, and cousin would learn about Phoenix Digital Solutions' potential contract before I made it back to my office. The drive back to our headquarters was quiet, with both Lisa and I processing the implications of what had just occurred. We'd successfully positioned Phoenix Digital Solutions for a contract that would further establish our reputation in Arizona's manufacturing community. But more personally, I demonstrated to the leadership of my family's company that the career path they'd dismissed as unrealistic had led to exactly the kind of success they respected. "Marcus," Lisa said as we pulled into our parking garage, "that went better than I expected. Morrison seems genuinely interested in working with us, and their technical team asked all the right questions. I think we have a real chance of winning this contract." She was right about the business opportunity, but I suspected the real test was just beginning. In 6 years of building Phoenix Digital Solutions, I'd proven my capabilities to clients, partners, and industry peers. Now I was about to find out whether I could prove them to the people whose opinions had once mattered most to me, and whether their recognition would feel as satisfying as I'd always imagined it would. The call came at 2:47 p.m. on December 15, 2018, exactly 26 hours after my meeting at Precision Manufacturing. I was reviewing quarterly projections with our CFO when my assistant knocked on my office door with an expression I'd never seen before. "Marcus," she said quietly, "there's a Robert Williams online too. He says he's your father and that it's urgent." For 6 years, I'd imagined what it would feel like when my father finally called. I'd pictured anger, reconciliation, emergency situations, or simple curiosity about my life. But I'd never imagined it would happen the day after I'd walked into his workplace as the CEO of a company they desperately needed. "Put him through," I said, dismissing our CFO and closing my office door. "Marcus." My father's voice was exactly as I remembered, measured, controlled, but carrying undertones I couldn't quite identify. "We need to talk." "Hello, Dad. It's been a long time." 6 years, he said. 6 years since you walked out of our house over some argument I can barely remember. And yesterday I find out from my supervisor that you were in our facility, in a suit that costs more than I make in a month, presenting proposals to our CEO like you own the place. The information had traveled through Precision Manufacturing faster than I'd anticipated. "Dad, I know," he interrupted. "You listen first. Do you have any idea what it's like to hear from your coworkers that your son, the son you haven't spoken to in 6 years, runs a company that our CEO specifically requested to meet with? Do you know what it feels like to realize that everyone at work knows more about your child's life than you do?" I could hear genuine pain in his voice, mixed with something else. Pride? Confusion? Anger? It was impossible to tell. "I didn't know you'd find out that way," I said. "But Dad, you made it clear 6 years ago that you didn't want to hear about my business. You called me useless, remember? You said I was wasting my life on unrealistic dreams." "I remember," he said quietly. "Marcus, your Uncle Pete called me last night. He said Morrison's assistant mentioned that Phoenix Digital Solutions employs over 60 people and has contracts worth millions of dollars. Is that true?" "It's true." The silence that followed lasted nearly 30 seconds. Finally, my father spoke again, and his voice was different, smaller, more uncertain than I'd ever heard it. "Marcus, I need to see you. Not for business, not because of what happened at work. I need to see my son and understand what the hell has been happening for the past 6 years." We agreed to meet at a diner halfway between Precision Manufacturing and my office, neutral territory where neither of us would have the advantage of familiar surroundings. As I drove there an hour later, I tried to prepare for a conversation I'd both dreaded and anticipated since that devastating family dinner 6 years earlier. My father was already seated in a corner booth when I arrived, still wearing his work clothes and looking older than I remembered. The years had carved deeper lines around his eyes, and his hair had gone completely gray, but he sat with the same straight-backed posture that had always made him seem larger than his actual size. "You look successful," he said as I sat down across from him. It wasn't exactly a compliment, but it wasn't an insult either. "I've done well," I replied carefully. "Tell me about your company, not the elevator pitch you gave Morrison yesterday. I want to understand what you actually built." For the next hour, I explained Phoenix Digital Solutions from its origins in my apartment to our current status as a regional technology consulting firm. I told him about the challenges of growing from a one-person operation to a 60-employee company, the complexity of managing multi-million-dollar projects, and the satisfaction of solving problems that made real differences in how businesses operated. My father listened without interrupting, occasionally asking questions that demonstrated he understood more about business operations than I'd given him credit for. When I finished, he sat quietly for several minutes, staring into his coffee cup. "Marcus," he finally said, "I owe you an apology that's 6 years overdue. When you left that night, I convinced myself that you were just being stubborn, and that reality would eventually force you to come back and accept the job at Precision. I never imagined you'd actually succeed at what you were trying to do." "Dad, I didn't build Phoenix Digital Solutions to prove you wrong. I built it because I believed I could create something valuable." "Maybe," he said, "but you have to admit there's some satisfaction in proving that your old man was completely wrong about your potential." There was, but I wasn't going to admit it to him. What I really wanted was for you to be proud of what I was accomplishing, but you'd already decided I was going to fail. His expression became pained. "Marcus, you have to understand what it looked like from my perspective. I'd worked in manufacturing for 25 years, following a career path that was predictable and secure. You were talking about starting a business in an industry I didn't understand, with no guarantee of income or stability. I thought I was protecting you from disappointment. By calling me useless, that was wrong," he admitted. "I was frustrated and scared that you were making a mistake that would cost you years of your life. But I should never have said that, and I should never have let that conversation end our relationship." Before I could respond, my father's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted. "That's your Uncle Pete," he said. "Apparently Morrison just announced to the management team that Precision Manufacturing is moving forward with Phoenix Digital Solutions for their technology upgrade. Pete wants to know if I knew about this before it happened. The news hit me like electricity. They awarded us the contract. Looks like it. Marcus, do you realize what this means? Your company is about to spend 8 months working inside the facility where your family has worked for decades. Tommy, Pete and I are going to watch you manage a project that affects every department in the company." The implications were staggering. For 6 years, I'd existed in my family's minds as the disappointing son who'd chosen an unrealistic career path. Now I would be working in their workplace, demonstrating daily that my unrealistic career had led to the kind of success they'd always claimed to value. "Dad," I said, "this doesn't have to be awkward. I'm going to be there as a professional consultant, not as your son trying to prove a point." "Marcus, everything about this situation is awkward, but maybe it's time for our family to deal with some awkward truths." He pulled out his wallet and placed money on the table to cover our coffee. "I'm going to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. Do you want a relationship with your family again, or are you too angry about what happened 6 years ago?" The question caught me off guard. For so long, I'd focused on proving my family wrong that I'd never seriously considered what would happen if they eventually acknowledged I was right. "I want a relationship," I said, "but not the same relationship we had before. I'm not the confused 24-year-old who needed your approval for every decision. I've built a life and a career that I'm proud of, with or without your recognition." "Fair enough," he said. "Then let's start over. Slowly, carefully, but let's try to be a family again." 3 days later, I received a call from David Morrison confirming that Precision Manufacturing had selected Phoenix Digital Solutions for their technology integration project. The contract was worth $1.8 million over 8 months, with potential for additional work based on our performance. "Marcus," David said during our call, "I want you to know that we chose Phoenix Digital Solutions based entirely on your technical capabilities and track record. The family connection didn't influence our decision, but I realize it might create unique dynamics during the implementation." "Mr. Morrison, I appreciate your confidence in our company. We'll deliver the same quality of work we've provided to every other client, regardless of any personal relationships. I'm sure you will. But Marcus, there's something else you should know. Word about your family connection has spread throughout the facility. Some employees are curious, some are impressed, and a few are skeptical about whether you got this contract based on merit or family influence. You'll need to be prepared for that kind of scrutiny. The scrutiny began on our first day of implementation in February 2019. As my team set up equipment and began the initial systems assessment, I could feel eyes following my every move. Conversations stopped when I walked by, and I caught glimpses of workers pointing me out to their colleagues. The real test came during our first facility-wide meeting, where I needed to explain the implementation process to all department supervisors. The room included my Uncle Pete, who managed quality control, and my cousin Tommy, who'd been promoted to production coordinator. It was the first time I'd seen either of them since that family dinner 6 years earlier. Uncle Pete looked stunned as I presented our implementation timeline and explained how the new systems would improve coordination between departments. Tommy's expression was more complex, a mixture of surprise, respect, and something that might have been envy. After the meeting, Tommy approached me as I was packing up my materials. "Marcus," he said, "I owe you an apology. 6 years ago, I thought you were delusional for trying to build a technology business." "I was wrong. Thanks, Tommy. I appreciate that. Can I ask you something?" He glanced around to make sure we weren't being overheard. "Are you angry with us? With the family, I mean?" I considered the question carefully. I was angry for a long time, but anger is exhausting, and ultimately it was more useful to channel that energy into building something successful. "Well, you definitely did that," he said with a rueful smile. "Jennifer's father has been talking about Phoenix Digital Solutions nonstop since your first meeting. He says you're one of the most impressive young business leaders he's worked with." The conversation was interrupted by my Uncle Pete, who'd been waiting nearby with obvious uncertainty about whether to approach. "Marcus," he said awkwardly, "I heard you and your dad are talking again." "We're working on it," I replied. "Good. That's good," he shifted uncomfortably. "Listen, I know I wasn't very supportive of your business ideas back then. I thought factory work was the only reliable career for men in our family. I was wrong about that." Over the following weeks, as our implementation progressed and the new systems began demonstrating their value, the dynamics at Precision Manufacturing shifted dramatically. Workers who'd initially been skeptical about the young CEO with family connections began to see the real improvements in their daily work processes. Production efficiency increased, communication between departments improved, and the quality control systems my Uncle Pete managed became significantly more accurate and responsive. But the most significant change was in how my family members began to understand what I'd actually accomplished. They saw me managing a team of specialists, coordinating with software vendors, and solving complex technical problems that affected every aspect of their workplace. Most importantly, they saw that the respect I received from David Morrison and other executives was based on competence, not connections. The moment that crystallized everything came in May 2019, during the final phase of our implementation. David Morrison was conducting a facility tour for potential investors, and he asked me to explain how our integration systems had improved Precision Manufacturing's operational capabilities. As I demonstrated the real-time production tracking system we'd implemented, I noticed my father watching from across the shop floor. For the first time in my memory, he was looking at me with unmistakable pride, not the condescending approval of a parent praising a child's finger painting, but the genuine respect of one professional acknowledging another's expertise. After the tour, David Morrison made a comment that would stay with me forever. "Ladies and gentlemen, what Marcus Williams and Phoenix Digital Solutions have accomplished here represents the future of manufacturing technology. This is exactly the kind of innovation that will keep American manufacturing competitive in the global marketplace." That evening, my father called me for the second time in 6 years. "Marcus," he said, "I watched you present to those investors today. I finally understand what you've been building all these years. I'm proud of you, son. I'm proud of what you've accomplished, and I'm sorry it took me so long to recognize it." 6 years after walking away from a family dinner where I'd been called useless, I'd returned to prove that the dreams they'd dismissed as unrealistic had become a reality that exceeded their highest expectations. But more importantly, I'd learned that true success wasn't about proving other people wrong. It was about building something meaningful while staying true to your own vision, regardless of who believed in you along the way. 5 years have passed since that emotional confrontation with my father at the diner, and as I sit here in my corner office watching the Phoenix sunset, I can honestly say that the journey has been more rewarding than I ever imagined possible. Not just financially, though Phoenix Digital Solutions now generates over $50 million in annual revenue, but personally, in ways that money could never measure. The precision manufacturing project became a catalyst for changes that extended far beyond our family's reconciliation. Our successful implementation there generated referrals throughout the manufacturing community, leading to contracts with companies across the Southwest. More importantly, it established Phoenix Digital Solutions as the premier technology consulting firm for mid-sized manufacturers, a reputation that opened doors we'd never anticipated. But the most profound transformation was what happened within our own family dynamics. My father, Uncle Pete, and cousin Tommy didn't just acknowledge my success, they became some of my strongest advocates. When other manufacturers in Phoenix needed technology consulting, they recommended Phoenix Digital Solutions not because of family loyalty, but because they'd witnessed firsthand the value we delivered. Tommy, in particular, underwent a remarkable transformation. After watching our implementation at Precision Manufacturing, he became fascinated with the intersection of technology and manufacturing operations. He started taking evening classes in business administration and information systems, eventually earning his MBA while continuing to work full-time. In 2021, when Phoenix Digital Solutions needed a regional operations manager for our expanding Arizona division, Tommy approached me with a proposal that caught me completely off guard. "Marcus," he said during a family barbecue at my parents' house, "I know this might sound crazy, but I'd like to apply for the operations manager position you're advertising." "Tommy, you've built a great career at Precision Manufacturing. David Morrison thinks highly of you, and you're married to his daughter. Why would you want to leave that security?" "Because you showed me something I never realized before," he replied. "There's a difference between having a secure job and building something meaningful. I've spent 8 years following procedures and managing existing processes. I want to help create solutions that didn't exist before." The conversation that followed was one of the most honest discussions Tommy and I had ever had. He acknowledged that his initial dismissal of my entrepreneurial ambitions had been rooted in fear that if I succeeded through risk-taking and innovation, it would diminish the value of his more conservative choices. But watching Phoenix Digital Solutions grow and succeed had changed his perspective on what was possible. "I don't want to work for you because we're family," he said. "I want to work for Phoenix Digital Solutions because I believe in what the company represents. But I also want to prove to myself that I can contribute to something that's creating real value, not just maintaining existing systems." Tommy joined Phoenix Digital Solutions in January 2022, and his impact was immediate and significant. His deep understanding of manufacturing operations, combined with his newly acquired business and technology knowledge, made him extraordinarily effective at bridging the gap between our technical capabilities and our clients' operational needs. Within 18 months, he'd been promoted to Vice President of Manufacturing Solutions. The transformation in my relationship with my father has been equally profound. Robert Williams, the man who once called me useless, became one of Phoenix Digital Solutions' most valuable informal advisors. His decades of manufacturing experience provided insights that helped us understand client challenges from the shop floor perspective, not just the executive level. More importantly, our professional collaboration helped heal the personal wounds that had separated us for 6 years. We developed a weekly ritual of having breakfast together every Saturday morning, during which we'd discuss everything from business strategy to family dynamics, to his growing appreciation for entrepreneurship. "Marcus," he said during one of these breakfasts in early 2023, "I need to tell you something I should have said years ago. What you've built with Phoenix Digital Solutions isn't just a successful business, it's proof that there are multiple paths to success, and the path I understood wasn't the only valid one." He paused, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. "Your generation thinks differently about risk, innovation, and what's possible. I was wrong to try to force you into the mold that had worked for me. More than that, I was wrong to dismiss your vision just because I couldn't see it myself." "Dad," I replied, "you weren't wrong to be concerned about my choices. Starting a business is risky, and most startups fail. You were trying to protect me from potential disappointment." "Maybe," he said, "but I think I was also protecting myself from having to acknowledge that the world was changing in ways I didn't understand. It was easier to dismiss your ideas than to admit that I might need to learn new ways of thinking about work and success. The conversation crystallized something I'd been thinking about for months: the importance of creating opportunities for other young entrepreneurs who might be facing the same skepticism and family pressure I'd experienced. If Phoenix Digital Solutions was going to have lasting impact beyond our financial success, we needed to help others overcome the barriers that nearly stopped me from pursuing my entrepreneurial ambitions. In September 2023, we launched the Phoenix Digital Innovations Lab, a program designed to support technology entrepreneurs in the manufacturing sector. The lab provides workspace, mentorship, and seed funding for startups developing solutions that could improve manufacturing operations. More importantly, it connects young entrepreneurs with established business leaders who can provide the kind of guidance and encouragement that I'd wished for during my early struggles. The first cohort of the Innovations Lab included 12 startups, ranging from AI-powered quality control systems to blockchain-based supply chain tracking. Working with these entrepreneurs reminded me of the excitement and terror I'd felt during Phoenix Digital Solutions' early days, but it also reinforced my conviction that innovation happens when people are willing to pursue ideas that others consider unrealistic. One of our lab participants, Sarah Chen, was developing software that could predict equipment failures before they occurred, potentially saving manufacturers millions of dollars in unplanned downtime. When I first heard her pitch, I was reminded of my own early presentations to skeptical clients who couldn't see the value of integrated systems. "Sarah," I told her during one of our mentorship sessions, "the biggest challenge you'll face isn't technical, it's convincing people that something they've never seen before is not only possible, but necessary. Don't let their skepticism discourage you from pursuing what you know is right." 6 months later, Sarah's company, Predictive Solutions, received a $2.3 million investment from a venture capital firm and began implementing their system at manufacturing facilities across 3 states. Her success validated our belief that the Innovations Lab could become a catalyst for the next generation of manufacturing technology leaders. As I reflect on the journey from that devastating family dinner in 2012 to where Phoenix Digital Solutions stands today, I'm struck by how the experience changed not just my career trajectory, but my understanding of what success actually means. For years, I thought success would be measured by proving my family wrong, showing them that their dismissal of my dreams was misguided. But real success turned out to be something more complex and more satisfying, building something valuable while maintaining relationships with people I cared about, even when they didn't initially understand or support what I was trying to accomplish. The most meaningful victory wasn't proving my family wrong, it was helping them understand a different way of thinking about possibility and achievement. Today, Phoenix Digital Solutions employs 127 people across 6 offices, serves clients throughout the Southwest, and has been recognized as one of the fastest-growing technology consulting firms in the region. We've helped over 200 manufacturing companies improve their operations, created hundreds of jobs, and contributed to the economic development of every community where we operate. But the legacy I'm most proud of isn't measured in revenue or recognition. It's the example we've set for other entrepreneurs who face skepticism, family pressure, or institutional barriers that make their dreams seem unrealistic. It's the young professionals we've mentored, who've gone on to start their own companies. It's the manufacturing workers whose jobs have become more efficient and satisfying because of the systems we've implemented. Most importantly, it's the proof that determination, combined with willingness to learn and adapt, can overcome almost any obstacle, including the devastating experience of being called useless by people whose opinions matter most to you. The 28-year-old man who sat at that family dinner table feeling crushed and alone could never have imagined that his silly computer games would eventually employ more people than worked at precision manufacturing. But more than that, he couldn't have imagined that the journey to prove himself would ultimately teach him that the most important person who needed to believe in his dreams was himself. As the sun sets over Phoenix and I prepare to head home to dinner with my wife and our 2 young children, I'm reminded that success isn't just about what you build, it's about what you make possible for others. The greatest legacy of Phoenix Digital Solutions won't be our financial achievements, but the dreams we've helped others pursue, and the proof we've provided that being called useless by others doesn't determine what you're actually capable of accomplishing. The boy they said would never amount to anything became the man who showed them, and countless others, that there's no limit to what's possible when you refuse to accept other people's limitations as your own reality. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.